Hey, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about speed. It's going to be a specific type of speed. And I'm going to show you a small trick to help you achieve it. I know it sounds ridiculous that something I would characterize as a small trick would be able to help you on your way to creating an effect that is so huge and impressive, but this is what worked for me, and today I'm going to share it with you. All right, so that was my attempt using the song Texas Flood by Stevie Ray Vaughan to play very fast in the way that Stevie Ray Vaughan played fast. I was pushing my limits there a little bit, so please excuse the mess. And note that I'm specifying that this is just one way speed shows up on the guitar, but it's my favorite way. I'm going to talk a little bit about why that is and how I came to arrive at that place of affection for that style of playing. And if you're not interested in any of that, you can go ahead and skip to this timestamp right here, where I get into the technical details of the trick that I have promised. So let's talk a little bit about speed and the different types of speed first. So when I was a kid, I idolized John Petrucci. If you don't know who John Petrucci is, you should, because he's awesome. But he's the guitar player for the progressive metal band Dream Theater. He's a shredder, and it's reductive to say that because he's so much more than a shredder. And really, just as a general note, we're going to be talking about speed in several different players in this video, but speed is really just one facet of their playing. Speed doesn't define any of the players that I'm going to be talking about, so don't take it that way. John Petrucci can play extremely fast, and I loved him as a kid, but it was always fairly evident to me what he was doing, right? If you listened, it was just alternate picking, more or less executed at an incredibly high level of efficiency. And I was able to intuitively understand that and sort of know that that kind of playing would be accessible after an Herculean amount of discipline and practice, right? So it was far away from my abilities, but I still sort of understood what was happening and what the path to get there would be. Eric Johnson was also in my awareness at this time. And Eric Johnson is an incredibly fast player. Again, if you're not familiar with him, just go check him out. He's a legend. He's probably on the rock guitar Mount Rushmore. And one of the signatures of his playing are these, what I would call waterfall scalular runs, descending scalular runs. It was a little bit harder to identify what was going on here versus John Petrucci, but I would eventually come to realize that what this sort of signature sound I was hearing were patterns or sequences down a scale. And sometimes the sequences would be changed up. But again, I got to a point pretty quickly where I understood what was happening and what I would need to practice if I wanted to accomplish that sound. And it's still on my list of things to practice a little bit more seriously. I'm not very good at that kind of playing. This sort of thing showed up later in my listening interests with guys like Joe Bonamassa and Eric Gales. You can hear examples of that, and I'll put them in right now for all three of those guys. All right, so then I arrived at college. My second year of college, my roommate had a habit of putting on a Stevie Ray Vaughan DVD. And up until this point, I obviously knew who Stevie Ray Vaughan was, but I'd really never dug in. And the DVD that my roommate was putting on was Live at the El Macambo, filmed at the El Macambo Club in Toronto in 1983. It's a legendary performance. It's on YouTube. Go check it out. The speed that Stevie Ray Vaughan was exhibiting during that performance, and I'll call out the performance of Texas Flood during that show as, for me, the most iconic single guitar song performance in existence today that I've come across anyway. No matter how many times I watched it or I listened to it, it did not make sense to me. The sounds coming out of Stevie's guitar were like a machine gun. And it definitely wasn't metal like John Petrucci, and it definitely wasn't rock either like Eric Johnson was, or even Eddie Van Halen. You know, guys in my high school were playing Eruption and these various impressive pieces on guitar that were tapping into, forgive the pun, but some advanced sort of speed playing techniques. It wasn't that either. The tone was different than those guys. It was less saturated, and the licks were happening over swinging shuffle grooves. That was the most important stuff. It was bluesy. Now, I did end up giving up on trying to decode Stevie at that time. It was just too advanced for me at that time. But I came back to it more determinedly many years later. And now, after having studied him more seriously and broken through many of the layers, I think the way that I would explain Stevie's speed, at least for those licks in the Texas Flood, El Macambo performance style, he's got many different types of speed. You know, for instance, what he plays on Rude Mood, the boogie, and Scuttle Button, you know, the intro to that. Those are different types of speed than the lead licks on Texas Flood. But what you're hearing is the combined effect of many different techniques and many different ways of producing a note on the guitar, all happening in short succession. You know, just from my playing at the top of this video, you had normal pick strokes, you had bends, you had hammer-ons, you had pull-offs, you had hammer-ons from nowhere, you had slide-ins, you had slide-outs, and you had double stops. Sometimes all of that stuff is happening in the span of a second or just a couple beats in a measure of music. And all of that was impossible for me to emulate for the longest time until I made one small modification to my playing. So let's get into that now. As we're coming up as guitar players and sort of evolving from beginner to intermediate players who maybe have some capability around single note playing and improvisation, we all know this box, right? I'm playing in G. I'm actually tuned down a half step, so if you're playing along at home, this would be G flat, but on the 3rd fret, this box. And I played it a very specific way there. The shape of that scale sits across 4 frets on the guitar, and we've got 4 fingers for fretting, you know, not thinking about the thumb wrap thing. And so it's easy for us to think of it as 1 finger per string, especially because we're playing I played these sort of finger dexterity exercises growing up. It's very much 1 finger per fret. And so it's easy to think I need to play that first position pentatonic box like this. 1, 4, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 4. What helped me unlock a lot of speed to be able to play in the style of Stevie Ray Vaughan and Texas Flood was breaking away from the idea that certain fingers needed to be assigned to certain frets inside of a position. And so very specifically, on the top of this scale, this, where the 3rd finger goes on the G string, sort of, for, you know the lick. Instead of bending this up with my 3rd finger, my ring finger, I started doing it with the 2nd finger. Okay, and I was surprised to discover how strong that 2nd finger was. I always thought that I needed this third finger to do that bend because it had the support of the second finger behind it. But in many ways, the second finger is just as strong and perfectly capable of performing that bend. And maybe you'll have to work on it, and maybe this won't work for you because that finger isn't as strong. Maybe you need to strengthen it. As with anything that I teach on this channel, if it doesn't work for you, leave it. If it does, take it. You know what I mean? Not everything's going to work for everybody, but this worked so well for me. And so one of the chain reactions of playing that bend with the second finger is all of a sudden you've got your third finger available, and that also shifts down a fret, and it can take care of these bends. And I was just able to play out of that sort of pentatonic that area with a lot more accuracy and a lot more speed. And one of the reasons why is because if you play this bend with the third finger, and then you want to grab, say, this note right here, what in this position it would be the 6th fret on the B string. If you watch this pinky finger closely, it kind of has to come from farther away and make a larger move, which at high speeds becomes problematic. Whereas if you're bending up here with your second finger, this third finger is just naturally hovering over that spot. And so you really just need to drop it down, and then you can pick it up again really fast. And it's just more directly under the fingers and easy. And then that's available for after you pull off. It's just hovering right here at an angle that seems conducive to clean playing. And you can just drop it down onto our balloon note, the flat 5, and play all of the slidey stuff. Right? I guess the big takeaway is that in this specific position, if you can force yourself to break away from the habit of using the pinky because it's 3 frets away naturally from where your pointer finger is, where you're setting a lot of anchors, your hand is actually going to fall in a position that allows for you to execute many of the techniques, such as a hammer-on and a bend and a pull-off in short succession. While you're up in this position, you've got both of these fingers now that are just sitting here, and they're already being thrown into action while this bend is finishing up, and you can just get all of that. Stevie did play like this. The Live at the El Macambo footage isn't high definition, seeing as it was taken like 27 years ago, but I'll grab a screenshot. But if you go watch the video on YouTube and go to the 440 mark, there's a good example of him playing a lick like this, where he's using that second finger to play the licks. I don't think that he always played the licks this way, but he certainly frequently did. Now, I know that's a small lesson for a not very small video, but there are a few really important points to take away. The first is that on the guitar, almost nothing is a rule when it comes to how you should play it. Whatever is comfortable, find something that works for you. There are a lot of guidelines, but they are always only that, guidelines, not rules. The second point that I want to drive home is that a lot of times, small changes, small adaptations to technique, little things that have been brought into your awareness can have a huge effect on your playing simply because of their ability to open new doors and unlock doors. To be honest with you, when I finally made the switch to playing that stuff with my second finger instead of my third finger on the G string, that broke me out of a multi-year plateau where I felt like I wasn't growing at all of a guitar player. And I've been growing ever since. It really catapulted me to a new level of playing. And it was something so small and stupid and obvious. And it took me seeing somebody do it up close for the light bulb to go off. So don't devalue small lessons because they can have large impacts. So something that you can do to practice this is just go learn that opening lick to Texas Flood. That one. I'm not going to do the lesson here. I'm sure it exists in a million different places, but it is a good, it's an awesome lick. And you'll also get this sort of flat 9 lick that Stevie loves to do, though. Under your fingers if you don't already have that, and you can add that to your blues playing. But it is an excellent one to practice to see how all of this stuff lays together. Play the notes that fall on the 6th fret with your ring finger, and play the big bend on the G string that starts on the 5th fret with your pointer finger. And see how that opens things up for you and hopefully unlocks a sound that seemed unobtainable beforehand. All right, I hope this was helpful. If it was, please do like the video, give the channel a subscription so you can see the future videos that I do as well. I've been loving all of the comments that have been coming through. Everyone's been super supportive and encouraging and making me feel like what I'm up to here is worthwhile. So please do drop me a line if you want to connect. I love talking to you guys. Until next time, happy practicing.